So, hello and welcome, everybody. We are here today. Well, I'm here going to run kind of a 30-minute or so masterclass thinking around consequences or outcomes. This is, without a doubt, one of the biggest questions. It's always a hot topic of debate, whether we are in the group and someone posts, whether we're working in our group programs and our membership one-to-one with families, whether I'm talking to professionals, other social workers. There's always a huge range of thoughts around this one, around what's right, what's wrong, what works, what doesn't work, what we should be doing, all of those things. As with everything, I am going to share with you my thoughts, my ideas, what we know works from having worked with hundreds of families, thousands of families now over the last, 7 or 8 years, doing this particular job, but also for a long time. As always, we have a huge range of parents and probably some professionals watching this with children with a huge range of needs. There is never a one size fits all. Okay. So if I'm saying something and you're like, that's just not going to work for my child, don't do it or adapt it to meet your child's needs. Okay. And ask the question. If you're not sure what to do, let me know. Pop it in, pop it in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Please respect everybody's opinions and everybody's views. Everybody does have differing opinions on this, and that's absolutely okay. We also need to remember that our own upbringing, our own backgrounds, and the social constraints with which we live in will impact our thoughts around this, particularly around consequences, and punishment and what that means and what should be put in place. So be aware of that when you're thinking about things. And you might find that things I say as we go through today really do trigger you at times. That's normal as well. So don't worry. It's quite normal to find it maybe a little bit hard to listen to something, those kind of things. Okay. So where do we start when we're thinking about consequences? I know my own perception of this has hugely changed over the years I've been a parent. And even working, when I worked in schools, when I worked with children through the Princess Trust, when I was doing various NGO and charity work, my thoughts around this have always been evolving, and I think they are as humans. For me, the word discipline, which we often think about, what discipline do our children need to learn about? That means to teach. It does not mean to punish. And I don't believe that children are ever naughty because they just feel like being naughty. There's always an underlying reason. Now, that reason could be any number of different things, but we have to work with our child, not against them. Having spent years in schools, working in a school and doing detention and seeing the same kids coming round and round the system, it doesn't change behavior. Putting your child on the naughty step doesn't change behavior for a lot of children. Consequences often, when we're putting them in as the adult, as the parent, make us feel better. And I've done it. When my son first moved in, I tried the naughty step because that's what I was told to do. It lasted about 38 seconds before he wiggled off and it just got worse. I didn't do it again. I've grounded my son for his entire life at one point in the middle of an argument with him. Now, obviously, that's totally unrealistic. It's never going to work. So we've all done these things, and it's very hard sometimes for us to even think there might be a different option. And what I want to share with you today is my thoughts around different options that I work with my son, who is neurodivergent and trauma and attachment needs, and work for nearly all of the families we work with. But it might feel quite counterintuitive. It might feel quite difficult to put into place. Okay. So as we go through, if you've got questions, pop them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them all as we go. So if you are using consequences and thinking, nothing's changing, the behavior it's not changing. I'm seeing the same thing day in, day out, or maybe slightly different, but basically the same stuff. It's not changing. I'm going to suggest that your child isn't able to learn from the consequences that you're using, that they're not able to respond differently just by having that consequence put in place. And So hopefully some of the things we're going to talk about today are going to give you some ideas that might help them to be able to manage scenarios differently, because I'm guessing they don't want to be doing that either. They don't want to be in that negative place. There are I thought start by talking about the three different types of consequences people tend to talk about that you've probably heard about. The first is illogical consequences. Now, these are the should I say, that most of us were brought up with. I certainly was. If you do something you shouldn't, then X is going to happen. So, for example, if you are, I don't know, unkind to your brother, you're not going to the party at the weekend. Or if you, in this day and age, if you're playing on your Xbox and you throw the controller across the room, or you start shouting and swearing, getting really angry, or you won't come off it, you're not going to football at the weekend. Now, those things are not related, and they don't help our child to manage their emotions in that moment and respond differently. All they know is, I got really upset. I got really distressed. I couldn't cope because I'd just been killed in Fortnite and I was really angry about it. And now you won't let me go to football. Huh? That's the type of consequence many of us would have had as children. And that was what happened. This isn't about bashing our parents or the older generation or anything like that. It's about saying that's just what happened for most of us. But a lot of our children don't actually learn from that, particularly if they're neurodiverse, got any learning needs, anything like that. They can't connect, oh, I need to be able to manage my emotions better and I can go to football. Or if they can connect it, it doesn't help them to manage their emotions differently. So for me, an illogical consequence like that isn't working, isn't helping anybody. And actually, as the parent, you're going to get more and more frustrated because it's not changing behavior. Okay. And I would say it's the same with schools going around with detentions, internal exclusions, external exclusions, whatever they're doing. If the support isn't being put in place for a child to manage that situation differently, be able to manage that situation, we can't expect a different response from them. Okay. So that's number one. The next type of consequence you'll often hear about, and there's a lot of debate around these, is logical consequences. So these are where the consequence is connected to the action. So, for example, I'm going to take the Xbox example again because I think it's an easy one that many of us understand. Child is playing on the Xbox, gets really, really wound up. Again, maybe they've been killed in Fortnite or whatever's happened, haven't won the game, whatever. They're getting more and more wound up. And maybe they just can't cope with that emotion. They can't cope with the fact that it's unfair and all of that stuff is happening. And then maybe you ask them to come off and the Xbox controller gets thrown across the room. It might break. They might shout at you. They might refuse to come off. All of those big emotions. A logical consequence would be you cannot play on the Xbox anymore, or the Xbox is banned for a week, or whatever it is, that game is banned. Now, that's logical. It's connected to what's happened. You've done this, so you can't keep playing with it. Now, if they've broken the controller, they won't be able to keep playing with it that day because the controller's broken. If you are taking it off them and saying you're not playing because you can't manage your emotions, again, we're not helping them to manage their emotions and to manage that and to be able to play and enjoy it. So the reality is our children are growing up in a world where they want to be able to game. So a logical consequence that you can't play it anymore isn't helping them to be able to play it and manage that emotion. So I would be really cautious of logical consequences. For some children, they do help. If they're maybe neurotypical and securely attached and those things, they will be able to learn from it. They will be able to hope potentially. Now, you might want to use a logical consequence. Maybe they've thrown the Xbox. I say use. I don't like the word use. But they might have thrown the Xbox controller across the room and it's broken. So they can't play it until you can get it repaired or buy a new one or whatever. Now, they're not cheap controllers. They're not cheap. So it might be a while until you can get the money together. So during that period, you use that to help them learn and think about how can they game and enjoy it? How can they manage it so that when they are playing, let's choose Fortnite again, if they are playing Fortnite, how can they not get quite so angry when they've been shot or when it's not working or somebody's not playing so well? And use that as an opportunity to support them with understanding their learning. What we're not going to do is, well, you threw the Xbox controller, so you can't have it anymore. It's your own fault. Shouldn't have thrown it. Told you that would happen. If you don't control your emotions, this is what's going to happen. We are trying to avoid all of that stuff. I know, I know, as a parent, it's very easy to say, well, it's your own fault. You shouldn't have thrown the controller. I'm pretty sure I've said that at some point in time as a parent. We get it. The reality is, though, that when we say that, we're really saying it for ourselves. It makes us feel better because I've done what I should do as a parent. I've put a consequence in. It's a bit like the illogical ones. As the parent, we feel like we've done what we should do. I've done it. I've put a consequence in. This is what society expects. But the reality is, doesn't help, doesn't move us forward. So, with a logical consequence, really think about if they've happened, the child's throwing the Xbox controller, which will happen. And sometimes you can't always stop it in the moment. Just think about, how am I supporting them through this with their emotions? Not how am I making myself feel like I've done what I should do as a parent? Because I promise you, in the long run, that isn't going to work. With a neurodivergent child, I don't use logical consequences anymore because actually they're not helpful. And they don't work in our house so particularly. So I would try and avoid those personally, but I appreciate for some people that feels a step too far. And sometimes those things have just happened. Um, the next type of consequence that we often hear about is a natural consequence. Now, this is an interesting one for me. Natural consequences often happen. Okay. They just happen. And when you are in the moment and they're just happening, okay, it's very easy to use the words, I told you so. Okay. We need to avoid the words, I told you so. So a natural consequence just happens. We're not using them, we're not putting them in place, we're not making sure they happen. They just happen. Okay. So a natural consequence, I'm going to take a really, really easy, simple example. A natural consequence, for example, when you go outside. So I went out for a walk this morning and I stuck my head outside the door and I was like, how cold is it? Do I need a coat? Do I need a woolly hat? What do I need? And I chose what I needed and wore it. Your child might not want to put a coat on that day. So you have two options of trying to persuade them and encourage them to put a coat on. Great idea. Do it. But that could lead into an almighty argument because they're refusing point blank. Now, my thought is, you don't lead into an almighty argument. If they really don't want to put their coat on, you just take their coat with you, you carry it. When they get outside and they go, actually, I'm really, really cold. Can I have my coat, please, Mum? You go, yeah, of course, no worries. Here you go, put your coat on. There's no I told you so. The natural consequences, they've gone out without a coat. They've realized it's cold. They've got cold. They put the coat on. You do not need to do the I told you so bit. That doesn't need to happen. But how often does it happen? I know that switch between my brain and my mouth does not always kick in time. So the or the well, I did tell you it was cold outside pops out. Now, our children do not need that. The natural consequence has happened. They've learned their lesson. They've come outside. It's freezing cold. They may not have learned their lesson. They may still not wear their coat next time. But that's okay. Don't use them and don't try and find the natural consequence. Sometimes I'll see, but I need to know what the natural consequence is so I can put it into place. I need to put the natural consequence into place. No, you don't. Anything you're putting into place is not natural. If they've had an argument with their friend at school and they were maybe said unkind things, kids do, that's part of life. Their friend might not want to play with them for a couple of days. That's the natural consequence. Okay. What we need to do is, as I've said, avoid the I told you so. If you're horrible to your friends, they're not going to want to play with you. That pops out of our mouths, doesn't it? Let's be honest, very easily, but it's not helpful. What they need is our support to understand the emotions, to think about what happened. How do they feel about it? What might they do differently next time? Depending on the child, depends on how you manage it. But they don't need the "I told you so," and they don't need you using natural consequences. I would say they don't need you using any consequences, and I'm gonna share some other options now. If you've got any questions, by the way, while I'm talking, or any thoughts, don't hesitate to put them in the comments. So when we're empathizing with them, we're helping them with emotions, we're helping them to understand. I, and for a long time, have kind of been working with families to think about, how do we move away from this idea of consequences, this idea of punishment, that they need to be punished for their bad in inverted commas behavior, that they've been naughty, so they need a punishment. If we flip it on its head and said, they've not been naughty, they've not been bad, they're struggling. In that moment, they had big emotions that they couldn't manage. And yes, some kids do push boundaries and some kids are a bit cheeky and some kids are a bit like, I'm going to do it anyway, mum. You know, they're supposed to push boundaries. That's what kids are supposed to do. But we need to work with them. And what if we stop thinking about what punishment do they need? What consequence do they need? And started thinking, what outcome do I want from this scenario? What do we want to do? What's my punishment? What am I trying to achieve with that punishment? So if we start thinking about it like that, I don't know about you, but that changes my mindset. Let me know what you think. Does it help you to think about what outcome do I want from this rather than what punishment or consequence do I need to put in place? Because when we think about it like that, we start thinking, okay, what outcome do I want? Actually, I want my child to stop hitting, stop swearing. I want them to be able to game and enjoy it and not end up with a broken controller or swearing or the angry and the aggression and the defiance that comes off it every time they play. I want them to be able to play with their friends and enjoy it and be happy. I want them to be able to go and play football and not keep getting sent off the pitch for, I don't know, getting angry and showing their aggression in difficult ways. When we start thinking about that, I think we change the way we think about how we support them. Okay. So, no change is going to happen overnight, obviously. Nothing is going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. When we are thinking about that, it needs our time, it needs our patience, and they need our support to change the behavior. They really do need those different things. How do we do it? That's the question. For me, there's a few different bits that all come together to help us think about, how do we help our child without using consequences to stop the behavior that we are finding unacceptable. Okay. Are our expectations realistic? You know, if they're being noisy, are they just noisy children? Children are noisy. You know, are we punishing them for playing loudly? So is that actually even, does that even need a consequence? But think about how we're going to do that. We can talk about our own emotions and make our own emotions normal. So you might have had a stressful day. Maybe you've been at work all day and it's been quite stressful, and you come home and you're just feeling a bit. You could say to your child, you know, actually, I'm feeling a bit stressed today because work's been quite stressful. It's not you. I just feel a bit. So I'm going to go and go for a walk around the block, do some yoga in the living room, do some deep breathing, kitchen boogie, enjoy a suck on an ice cube because it's great for regulating and releasing stress. Splash my face with cold water. Any of those things that you know help, so that we are teaching our child how to manage their emotions without telling them what to do. And obviously, how you do that and the way you do that is really going to depend on your child and their understanding of emotions. I do think it's important as adults, we are sharing our emotions with our children so that they understand all emotions are normal. Being angry is normal. We all get angry at times. Being fearful, being excited, being happy, being sad, feeling shame. All of those emotions are normal, but how do we manage it? And kids need us to show them how to manage it and teach them, but not in a sit down and learn how to be happy, because most of our kids are going to be like, what? See you later. We also need to remember that Different people feel emotions differently. So, how I feel my stress, my anger could be totally different to all of you guys listening. And it's probably different to my son because we all feel emotions in our body differently. So, we don't want to tell them how to feel it. So, we can talk about emotions and share how we manage different emotions. That's one thing. The other part of this for me is talking to them about how they feel about their own emotions. What was going on for them? What can we do to help them and support them? If we go back to the gaming example, our children might think we don't want them to be gaming. Yeah, because maybe we say, you get so angry, we don't think you should be playing this game. Or if you can't stop being so angry, you're not playing it anymore. What if we turned that on its head and said, we want you to be able to game and enjoy it, but we want to help you not end up smashing a controller or getting really angry or shouting at your friends because we don't think you're enjoying that bit. How can we work with you to help you be able to enjoy it? What can we put in place? And that might be sitting with them, and it might be for hours on end to start with to help them think about how they manage their emotion in that moment and help them to regulate through it. So as you see them starting to get angry, helping them to regulate, doing some breathing, giving them something to squeeze, just taking their focus away for a second to help them calm down. Obviously, not at a crucial part in the game. Don't take their focus away at a crucial part of the game because that may not go down very well, but really work with them to find that solution. And by working collaboratively, you are getting the outcome you want, which is a child who is enjoying gaming without trashing the place, whatever's happening. And for me, that's the outcome part of this. I want them to be able to enjoy it. How do I get there? Well, I don't get there by blocking them from playing or grounding them for the next 3 weeks because that doesn't help them manage it. But by working with them, we can help them to manage it. We regulate with them and we really help them through that regulation. We can Another way we think about outcomes is to apologize if we've got it wrong. Okay. So I have been known to engage in the odd meltdown with my son. I've been teaching this for years and I know I should de-escalate and I know I shouldn't get totally involved, but I do sometimes. For lots of different reasons. Sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm stressed, sometimes my hormones have decided that I'm going to have an argument and they take over control, and it's just the way it is. Uh, I'm sure lots of you know that feeling when your hormones take over. So if you've got it wrong, if you have gone, oh, really shouted just then, or I said something I regretted, or I did something I regretted, or actually I was being really unfair because I did just give you a huge big consequence, which is just unrealistic or unreasonable or unfair. That apology, that I'm so sorry, I just got that really wrong, didn't I? Or I'm so sorry I shouted, or I'm so sorry I don't know, whatever it is. It's really, really important. It really makes a difference to how they are feeling. And I think we underestimate sometimes the power of apologizing, the power of saying I'm sorry, and modeling, role modeling to our children. When you get it wrong, it's okay. This is what you do. And that doesn't mean that it's excusing maybe they were being really aggressive, violent, physically aggressive, verbally aggressive, whatever. It doesn't excuse that behavior. It's not about saying, if you apologize afterwards, it's fine to go and do what you like. It's not. It's about saying, when you get it wrong, this is what you do to reconnect, to apologize. This is what I'm doing. And there may absolutely need to be those conversations that says, you know, I've noticed when you're really angry, you are lashing out, you're swearing, you're whatever. I want to help you to be able to show me your anger in a safe way because I know you don't want to be hitting your brother, hitting your sister, hitting me, whatever it is they're doing. So I want to work with you to find other ways of doing that. Okay. So it is about helping them to understand their emotions. And for me, all of these bits come towards that outcome of we want that change, that work in a way that punishment doesn't. It doesn't change things. And if it did, to be honest, none of us would be in this group. That's the reality. If consequences like detentions at school, grounding, naughty step, all of that stuff worked, I wouldn't have a job because you'd only have to do it once or twice and genius, problem solved. We wouldn't all be here. So we know they don't work because we keep having to do them over and 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 over again, and we are not moving forward. But if we can think about these outcomes, if we can talk to them about emotions, if we can talk to them out after an outburst, if we can work with them to help them find other ways of managing their emotions, then we are moving forwards. Okay. The final part of this I want to think about. Actually, there's two parts. When we're talking to them, it's not about shaming them or telling them off. It's about working with them and saying, I could see you were upset earlier on. Do you know why? Do you want to talk about it? Maybe why is not the right word, but do you want to talk about it? Did something happen? How can I help you with those emotions? Those are the important things. It's not about shaming or telling them off because that's not going to work. And they're not going to talk to you about what happened. The barriers are just going to go up and they're going to ignore you. Okay. The final part of this is thinking about our own behavior and reflecting. So we might have done an apology if we got it wrong. If we shouted. I'm quite good at apologizing, by the way. Do have to do it once a week, probably, when I lose my what's it with my son. But that's where we go. We will have to do it sometimes. We also need to think about, is there something I could be doing differently that would support my child? So I've talked about maybe sitting down with them and saying, look, I know you want to be able to game. I want you to be able to enjoy it. How do I do it? If you can't do that, you think they just need to ban it, whatever. Actually, is our behavior, I'm gonna say, not helping them? Could it be creating more issues because we're not teaching them how to manage it effectively? And I don't mean that in a difficult way, in a negative way. I'm not a gamer. My son is a big techie. He loves his tech, he loves his gaming, he loves his computer, he can build computers, he does a whole load of stuff that I don't even understand, quite frankly. He's taught himself. I have chosen to work with him around that, around the emotions around gaming, and spent hours and hours and hours with him gaming so that he can really enjoy it now. He also chooses to come off. Now, that's him. That might not be every child, but we have to find those ways of thinking, what is it that I need to reflect on myself? If I really believe consequences and enforcing them and grounding them or whatever is the way to go, is that working? And if it's not, what's stopping me from thinking something else might work? And then also in the moment when your child is escalating, actually, what am I doing that may not be helping? Am I talking too much? Is my child overwhelmed from a sensory perspective? So actually, I need to calm the music down, stop talking so much, think about how to help them. Do they need a blanket to curl up in? Do they need the lights dimmed? Do they need whatever it is? Do they need the dog in here to curl up with? Do they need the dog not in here because the dog's barking? What do they need? What can I do? How am I their harbour walls to really protect them and think about it? Okay. And I use the analogy of harbour walls to think about, we are their harbour walls. We are there to support them, to protect them, to keep them safe. Am I being their harbour walls in the way they need me to? Because if I am, then I'm starting to work towards the outcome. If I'm standing there saying, go and calm yourself down, you just got to sort it out, that's not good enough, then I'm thinking more about consequences. If I can be their harbour walls, if I can work with them, if I can think about, how am I communicating, how am I thinking, how am I helping them understand themselves? Do I need to do that for myself because their communication and their understanding of their own emotions isn't there enough? Or can I actually have that collaborative conversation with my child to help them understand themselves? This is not a short game, but actually consequences aren't either. So this belief you can put a consequence in and behavior will change straight away, we all know is not the truth. We all know that is not the case. It doesn't work like that. Because if it did, as I said, none of us would be here. We know this is a long game. We know it takes time. But what I do know from the huge numbers of parents that I work with, and I actually had this conversation with a parent this week, when they put the time in to create the connection and think about outcomes, they reduced the number of meltdowns that were happening in their house relatively quickly. In terms, some of them reduced by length, some of them reduced in intensity. So actually then they had more capacity and more space to connect with them, to spend time with them, to engage in them in a positive way. And we know that that snowballs. So the more time you can spend with them in a positive way, the more it snowballs, the more time you've got, the less time you're dealing with the negative stuff. Okay. So that's my thoughts on outcomes instead of consequences. Consequences often don't work for the vast majority of our children, particularly when we are using them. If it's a natural consequence, it's just going to happen. Avoid the I told you so's because that really, really doesn't help. Or try and avoid the I told you so's. So easy to pop out the mouth, but we need to try and find the switch between brain and mouth. And maybe I would invite you to think about, if I thought about outcomes instead of consequences, that enables me to connect with my child in a different way. And actually, that enables me to think differently and support them in a different way. So, those challenges, they start to learn about themselves, and those challenges naturally start to decrease because they're able to manage their emotions in a different way. And I'm able to work with them in a different way to manage them. So, that is today's masterclass, consequences or outcomes. If you have any questions, any thoughts, I'll hang around for a few minutes. Feel free to put them in the chat. I can't see any at the moment, but I will just keep checking in the Facebook group and see if any pop up. So let me know if you've got any you want to ask about or anything you want to pop in there. Hopefully it's been helpful and just helped you think about it differently. This is such a big topic. And of course, as you're thinking about it, as you're reflecting, ask questions in the group. If you're in the Connective Parenting Hub, I know there's some of you, I can see some of you watching live in there. Obviously, we've got extra training. There is some training in the learning zone around that as well. So jump in there and do that. If this is a topic that you're thinking, I really need to get my head around this, I really need to think more, I would invite you to think about joining the Connective Parenting Hub. It's our membership. It's £15 a month for as much training and support as you like. We do a weekly Q&A with myself and one of the team. We have specialist OTs. We've started running school sessions in there. We get to know you all, so we know you kind of on a one-to-one basis as well, so we can give you some really personalized help, which we can't do in the free group because there's 6,500 of you and we can't know you all personally. So if you would like that, feel free to come and join us in the hub. I say there's loads and loads of resources in there. But thank you. I can see some thank yous coming in and that it's been really helpful. So I hope that's, got you thinking a little bit. Come and join us at any point. Ask questions as you go. And say if you want to come and join us in the hub, I'll put a link in and you are more than welcome to do that. So are there any questions, just before I disappear off, are there any questions, anything else I can help with? I know it's a lot to think about. So for some of you, it'll be just wanting to go and kind of let it percolate and think about it. But I really do kind of just recommend thinking about it differently and moving to outcomes, just thinking about outcomes rather than consequences. It's not always easy. It does take a bit of time, but I promise you it's really effective and it does work. It's just moving forward to that. So there we go. Okay. I think we are there. Thank you. Hey, I've had lots of thank yous, so thank you very much, and lots of it's been really helpful. So thank you. I'm really, really pleased it's been helpful. And kind of giving you the opportunity to really think about what was going on and kind of just a bit of a reframe. So I will disappear off now. As I said, any comments, any questions, either pop them in. If you're watching this on the replay, pop them in the comments, not a problem, or start a new post. And if you're in the hub, obviously we're there to support you and help you as much as you would like. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a fabulous weekend. And I will be back. Well, I'll be back. Obviously, we'll be sharing posts and tips every day, as always. We're back next month with another masterclass. See you later, everybody. Bye.